Beauty.
Hello and welcome to my presentation on video games. We're going to be looking at the cognitive enhancement that might be possible with it, along with its applications in education, as well as the different ways in which it might affect the future and the different ways in which it might be developed to be more effective and do better research and stuff like that. So let me just do a share screen here so we can get into my PowerPoint presentation. I guess I should first ask, obviously you're a fan of video games if you were interested in seeing what this is all about.
Yeah.
There we go here. Any particular genres that you really enjoy?
Oh, all sorts of them. I love real-time strategy games. I always have. Recently, I'm playing a lot of Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh, yes, who isn't, eh?
Right?
Yeah, me and my brother are about to get back into that one, and at the moment we're just holding off until we can have a little bit of time to ourselves to actually focus on it. Because yeah, really interested in doing that with somebody else.
Oh yeah.
Let's see here. My settings, my screen share is taking up the space. There we go. Aha. Okay, let me know if you can see this.
Yeah, I can see your presenter sort of like just normal PowerPoint view.
Oh, okay, excellent. That's perfect. For some reason, it looks different on my side this time, so I'm not sure what happened differently, but as long as it looks good on your side. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
if you hit the presenter mode, it'll go into sort of the typical. The first screen that you're sharing is like the one that everybody sees, and then on your other screen, if you have a second screen, you can put up your speaker's notes and stuff like that.
Okay, good stuff, good stuff. Yeah, I have another computer that I'm operating off of here, but I pressed on present, but it doesn't
Yeah.
let me try that again.
Oh yeah,
Present.
your present button was grayed out. There we go.
There
That's
we
what
go.
that's what it should look like.
Good stuff. Okay, and like I said, the title. We also got some Tetris blocks there, but we're going to start off by first delving into a little bit about my history and the early history of video games. Now, video games have been around for not that long of a time. We're under 100 years of them really existing, but the very first one was a something very similar to Pong, which was created back in 1958 by a physicist actually. And as time went on, like the actual Pong game came out another 8 years or so after that. And the one of the more interesting times for me was when the Nintendo Entertainment System was released because that was my first system, which was 1983. And one of my dates is wrong there. I believe the one that was released in the US was a little bit later on. The Famicom was 2 or 3 years beforehand, which is what it was called when it was released in Japan. Now there have been many consoles and generations since then. It's actually insane that there's been well, hundreds and hundreds that have been created. Not all of them have been successful. Many have been scrapped before they are actually released. But over 3 billion console and PC gamers at this point, and that doesn't even include a lot of the casual and a lot of the recent expansions of gamers who might not even consider themselves gamers at this point. Um, uh, in regards to my own history, obviously, like early on, there wasn't a lot of variety in terms of games you could play. Platformers and action games were kind of the biggest thing. Later on, I started to get into role playing games, adventure games, strategy puzzles, like anything that gave me a little bit of a challenge, especially with new mechanics and stuff like that. I always dug into. Today, things have expanded significantly with an incredible amount of games that people might not even have considered games back in the day, like the weird simulation games where you're just doing a day-to-day job, and that is basically the game, just different versions of power washing dirty things, or pretending to be a demolitions expert and breaking down the things that are around you, or the what was it? Hard Space Shipbreaker is one that I played recently, which is just about being up in space and trying to make money by breaking down these gigantic wrecks of ships. And little by little, you have more and more difficulty as like there's certain trip wires you have to do. You have to plan out how you're breaking things down, but there's always this pressure on you to try and do it faster and better and buy new equipment and things so you can do it better. Very surprising that I would enjoy something like that compared to how most games are, but there's also lots of games that have to do with survival, a very common theme in most games these days, especially modern ones. Crafting and games that are basically built on your own creativity and what you want to do with the game are also very popular these days, and they give gamers a lot of options in terms of what they can dive into. One really interesting thing about that too is that some of these creative and crafting games have become so um, they are sufficiently complex that you can actually create small computers and other systems inside of the game that can actually, in some cases, even create a game that you can play on those systems, which was just quite astounding. It takes a long time for people to get through to that, but that's one of the cool things about video games, especially modern ones, is you get to pick how you want to play the game, and it gives you for a lot of replayability and a lot of different things you can enjoy about it. Nowadays, yeah, I enjoy games of all types, and it is impossible to stay on top of all the new ones that are coming out every single day. There's so many, every person can be their own developer, and there's also massive teams at the same time that are making, really cool renditions of things that have existed for a long time, and a lot of stuff that is just mashing kind of the newest, hottest trends and stuff like that into a game all at once, which is pretty sweet. That could also negatively impact, the quality of games going forward, but not something that we're going to get into today. Next thing we got here. Let's get into a little bit of the features of the good video game because it's important for how this is going to connect to the education side of things when we're going into it. Video games are, as I found out at a very young age, 4 years old was when I started playing video games, and I just never stopped after that point. But they are very addictive. They can often be challenging. I find a good video game has to balance the difficulty of the game with the capabilities of the people that you're expecting to play the game. Immediate feedback and intuitive controls are very important to be able to play the game effectively and not have these barriers to actually be able to interact and use the mechanics of the game. They can be very relaxing sometimes, a very different thing than the challenging aspect. This is going back into the different ways that a game can come about. It can be fun. They can be used for escapism, replayability, where you can get a different experience each time you go through the game. Multiple win conditions is important for that, or different ways of playing. And games that encourage creativity can end up for endless entertainment for people who really want to, put their time into it. Immersive storytelling also is really important for me and something that has really shined the over the past 5 or 6 years, just because it's this people are really starting to master the medium, or at least all of the different media that go into the medium in order to make a really fantastic and touching or heart-wrenching stories, which, as we'll find, a lot of these things can be harnessed for uses in a bunch of different ways. Now, this is a short list of positive factors that can enhance learning. Engagement, something that we kind of glossed over in terms of things that exist in video games, good ones especially, which has to do with active learning and motivation, feeling motivated to actually go through the process to learn the game, get better at it, and keep on going. And also active learning, where you are basically taking the thinking portion of the thing and actually considering what you're doing. You don't necessarily do that as much with video games, which is one of the reasons that people really enjoy them. Not to say that there aren't certain games such as strategy and stuff like that that actually have to allow, like, you really have to delve deeper into the mechanics and understanding how they work, especially with highly complex games. Very important when you're trying to enhance learning to tap into self-motivation, helping people feel like what they're doing is useful, or that they are actively involved in doing something that will get them accolades or awards or help their standing in the world a little bit better. All sorts of different ways that can help you basically take an onus for your learning and actually try to do a better job and pay more attention and engage a little bit better with what you're getting into. On top of that, communities of learning, I feel, is very, very important for expanding your learning beyond the regular curriculum, and is another thing that is actually very common inside of video games. These communities that are created where people can really help push them to the next level. One really I guess, stark example in this is speedrunners. Speedrunners are a very unique type of gamer that are trying to often play the game in a way that the creators never intended, but has massive communities around them that are all trying to work together to try to find new glitches or new skips, new ways of doing things faster than they ever did before, because complex games can have lots of different things wrong with them, and you spend enough time and eventually you'll suss out all these different ways of breaking the game in new ways, and the communities are quite robust in these things, and very enjoyable for myself as not a speedrunner to actually pay attention to and enjoy. Now then, going on. So obviously you can see that there are some similar attributes between those two things. So there does appear to be a certain overlap that can maybe be exploited or can be at least used in a way in order for us to create games that help with our learning and help us to advance. Obviously, inherent competition. A lot of games, if you are playing with another person, or even if you're playing on your own, like in terms of single player games, or you're playing cooperatively, even there's always a chance for you to compare scores and compare how people are doing things. Obviously, if you're doing this in the terms of schooling, it's very important to have the option of anonymity, just because not everybody is going to feel positive about being compared to the people around them. This is an issue that kind of takes people out of the school experience sometimes, when they kind of don't want to be in that competition, yet they are forced to be in that competition. So always good to have that option. Not everybody has to compete for you to have this robust thing going on. Another very what I see as a very useful thing is infusing storytelling into the things that you are trying to teach. Because if you are able to draw the person into the story that you're trying to tell, and there are little nuggets of wisdom or ways of teaching you things along with that, then it can be very, very effective to get that person's attention and keep it, make them want to go through to the end in order to get that knowledge or to get the win. Now, there are certain gameplay elements that are more effective than others, which we'll get into a little bit. It's a very messy thing when it comes to trying to study these things. It's also very great that this kind of connectivity, especially of like game environments nowadays, all the different forums and Discord and all these different ways that you connect with the developers and other players and stuff like that, also makes it very easy to have these communities, which already exist because of people's loves for these games. So it kind of naturally goes into those communities of I believe it was yes, communities of learning. So you already have a community that can be used for people to help each other out and to help us all rise to another level. Now, immersive teaching is another thing that can also be very effective. Definitely a much newer thing than most of the other video game stuff with the rise of VR. VR has been around for quite some time, almost as long as video games at this point, but it's taken a lot longer for it to actually become viable and for people to actually get their hands on it and be able to screw around with it and develop as well as enjoy those games. But it has definitely come a long way, and consumer VR systems are becoming more ubiquitous all the time. And in that sense, you can actually one of the more effective things is when you really are able to imprint on the character that you're playing, so you feel like you are actually in their shoes. And VR is the closest that we've ever been able to get to that particular feeling. And it will have very important implications for something that I myself am interested in, something that I'm working towards in my own career. Before we go forward, too, I'd like to discuss a little bit about cognitive enhancements and how kind of what the research says in regards to that at the moment. Now, there is a lot of research that's been done on video games. Unfortunately, there is also an incredible amount of bias when it comes to uh, the uh, the way that people want to hype these things up, to hype the results and try to make it seem like it has more of an effect than it actually does. In terms of two separate areas, memory and psychosocial outcomes, it doesn't tend to have much of a marked positive effect like once you take out the bias, which I was a little bit surprised. I figure memory would be in there. It's not surprising that your attention and I believe it's attention and yeah, attention and perception rankings are actually a little bit. There is like around 0.5 of a standard deviation of improvement, which is actually pretty impressive. But the effects of action games, fighting games, shooters, that kind of thing has been shown to be kind of effective a few times in the past. So that's not too surprising. Higher cognitive enhancements as well, higher order cognitive functions can actually have a boost as well, depending on the type of games. This is more associated with strategy games or puzzle games or things of that nature, where you really have to take in a lot of information and also be able to make the best decision in a very short period of time. So definitely helps with that. But overall, the straight up cognitive enhancements from just playing video games straight up is fairly limited. So this isn't necessarily that doesn't mean that you can't have. Perhaps there will be specialized games. This is just normal games that are being played, and measurements are being taken before and after in order to see how improvements have been made. These aren't necessarily with games that are designed specifically to improve these things. So it's definitely something that we can look to in the future. But other than that, as far as cognitive enhancements goes, they're fairly limited, but a lot of promise and a lot more research needs to be done. We'll talk about the how things can be kind of sorted out and how research can be done a little bit better to really hone in on the things that are having the most positive effect. Um, uh, okay, let's see here. So these are some really great examples here about how video games have done incredible things on the world stage in terms of really engaging certain groups of people who might not have looked at those kind of problems in the first place, and also helped people learn specific things, very specific things, through the lens of a video game. One of the more monumental ones, and probably the most famous one, is the protein folding game, Fold It, which was actually created to help scientists solve new ways of folding proteins, which have innumerable different ways that they can fold. And science, most scientists, like, there was still progress being made in this. They figured this was a good way to try and engage a whole group of new people under the guise of a puzzle game. So a whole bunch of puzzlers got in there and went to work, and it was incredible the ramp in effectiveness for how many new ways of folding these proteins they found as they went on. It was a very, very successful thing. It isn't so monumental anymore because AI has actually kind of overtaken what is possible by human minds using their puzzling abilities to try to fold things. But it was very, very impressive when it first came out. Another really cool one called Variant Limits, which was created by an outfit that actually does lots and lots of different game-based educational things. And their thing was, it was a third-person adventure game, which was meant to teach people calculus, which was quite impressive. And that just had a lot to do with opening these doors, which all followed certain like you would have gears basically that would shift a particular way depending on the function on either side, and you would have to basically make the function bring the function to a certain point so that both of these gears would be flipped a certain way so that you go forward. And it just got more and more complex as time went on, especially and this whole time they're teaching about the things, all the different things in calculus, and you don't actually get through to the end of the game unless you have 100% mastered each of the different skills that it's trying to teach you. So there was actually a course built specifically around this, which we'll talk about a little bit later, for future ideas and how courses can actually be centralized around a game that just has supplementary things around it. The game teaches you everything that you need to know, and then you can delve a little bit deeper in other supplementary classes and things. People just it's a really, if you can make a good game that also teaches you things, it's really effective at teaching people what they know. There was an art history game called Arti Mecenas, I think it's called, and that was actually a game about the Renaissance, I believe. You are an art collector who is basically trying to make decisions in this world based on world events in order to collect and trade and deal with all these different things. But it was it was very effective, and was also centralized inside of a course, a very core piece of that particular course for people to learn and to pass the class that they were in. VR skills training, which I had mentioned briefly before, is actually the field that I want to get into, which is creating VR systems for teaching a variety of hands-on and hands-on skills, which in some cases can be kind of difficult and time-consuming to do on your own, but can also be very expensive or dangerous even to be trying these things. So they give us open up a lot of doors for us having hands-on training that you can do at your own leisure, that allows you to learn and build upon your skills and get comfortable doing things before you have to go out of the field. And the stakes are a lot higher. Another really fun one is Polybridge, which actually is basically, you have these kooky situations where you have to try and build bridges in order to get a vehicle or multiple vehicles across a span. And because they're using like real physical um, um, because the objects that you are building it with have real physical properties, you get to learn about the stresses of a building, or the stresses of bridges that you create, and how certain weights and certain things can affect it. And there's a lot of really non-bridge like things you can do with that game as well. It's actually quite wild and worth checking out if you have that kind of an interest. But it gives you a lot of creativity for how you choose to get these things across. But it is teaching you real engineering things as it goes on, just maybe not in the way the course would teach you. So that's a little bit of a bonus one. Okay, and yeah, so that's the end of that particular thing. In addition, I also wanted to talk about, so as you can see, because of the crossover between video games and positive educational situations, there is a lot of, here, let me just pop out of here. One second. Oh, there it is. Stop share. It's just on the top. Sorry about that. Yeah, so that's basically a breakdown about the different positive factors that can enhance learning, along with the opportunities and the crossover when it comes to video games, and a bunch of different real world examples of those things, along with the iffy cognitive enhancements that could exist. In addition, I also wanted to talk a little bit about where it goes in the future. For instance, like I was talking about before, game-centric courses. The fact that you can put a bunch of development into creating a game, and that could be a game that could be played for years and years to come, updated, upgraded, and going forward, so that it can continue to teach people in an effective and enjoyable way for the people that are there. Because this is already been proven to work in certain circumstances, it's very likely that we'll see more of that as it goes on, especially when you have people like in that one calculus example that I had given, the variant limits. There was no fighting to get people into that game and playing it for their homework. They just went in, they did it, they enjoyed it, and they had a 20% increase in terms of the effectiveness of the teaching. Everybody was getting past the class because everybody wanted to, didn't mind at the very least playing the game and getting through it. In addition, the mechanics this is one of the issues that I was talking about with the research that was being done. The connections based on genres were not nearly as strong as specific factors inside of games. So when you have specific types of mechanics inside of a game, they are the things that are actually doing the cognitive enhancements when it comes out to it. It isn't necessarily the genre. And because a lot of scientists who are doing studies on video games, they might not necessarily be players themselves in a lot of cases. The way that they group things together can be very confusing and inconsistent. So focusing in the future on research that focuses on the actual mechanisms by which and the way by which the game is played, we might be able to drill down a little bit better on which things are more effective for actually making that happen and helping people both get cognitive enhancement as well as learning the thing that it's trying to teach. Also good for game developers as well if they can, kind of hone in on the mechanics that actually are more beneficial for the player and maybe engage them a little bit better as well. Now, when it comes to perspectives as well, it's also very important to get into the point of reference that you have when you are playing a game and how that affects things. Obviously, certain types of games only come in one form, like first-person shooters. It's in the name. First person is the perspective that you're going off of, and that can actually be very effective in certain ways, such in regards to putting yourself into that character, but less effective to say third person or other types of views which work well for strategy games and things like that, where you're seeing more of an effect in terms of your higher level cognitive functions. So the relation between the character that you're playing as and its world also has an effect on how those things go. Still a lot of research that needs to be done in that regard, though. Like I was saying before, there's a lot of bias in the research as well, which makes it very difficult to really hone in on exactly what is going on. Things are kind of sensationalized when it comes to video games, so definitely something that we gotta be wary of in the future. Yeah, and I'd just like to finish off here with another thing that I think might be quite useful in regards to my own plans for the first aid VR is basically what I was going to be working on once I get finish my PIDP degree. And what's great about that is I think that there is a possibility of actually being able to encourage people to go into fields and things like that by basically having multiple levels. You have multiple levels of a VR experience. You can have obviously on the highest level the one that might be paired with an actual occupational first aid course where it is helping you get through and get your degree. You might have a middle area which is freely accessible to everybody, which teaches you everything you need to know, just doesn't come with a certification at the end of it. And then you can have on the left-hand side something that is basically built to be fun, built to be enjoyable, built to be a great experience overall. And it may have all of these first aid things mixed in there, except, maybe you're dealing with like alien viruses and stuff like that as well. You add those extra things that make video games interesting and fun and unique, which could, I believe, naturally lead people to the next stage and maybe even the next stage. So it's definitely something that I'm interested in exploring with my own work in the future. And I believe that this kind of thing, multiple levels that are drawing people into the ability, creating an interest anyways of them maybe learning new skills and going further with what they have learned once they've had their fun with a particular game, especially if we can make that VR experience enjoyable as well, even at the certification level. Then it really doesn't seem like too bad of an idea. Yeah, but that concludes my presentation, and I will now open the floor for questions. You got anything to ask me, Bruce?
Woo, I'm gonna clap. Hey, good stuff. That was awesome. I really enjoyed
Oh, man, I'm glad you enjoyed
that.
it.
um, so you talked a little bit about real-time strategy and puzzle games and the impact it can have on sort of cognitive improvements. I wasn't sure if you were sort of leading into like research around like Alzheimer's and like the I guess the breakdown of cognitive ability and the impacts that these real-time strategy and puzzle games were sort of leading into with that. Did you do any reading on sort of that side of things or?
I did not find any research specific to that because that would have been
Okay.
interesting to get into because with cognitive enhancement comes kind of perhaps a slowing degradation when it comes to some of these other types of disease. I'd be curious
Mm-hmm.
to know, have you read anything of such of a
I,
sort?
I saw some a few years ago, yeah, but I haven't looked at it recently, and it sort of caught my eye. I was like, "Oh, interesting." Practicing all these like multitasking abilities and resource management and development and all that at the same time can really, really delay or stave off some of these diseases. So I was really interested to sort of see um, if they had developed that further because I haven't looked into it since I saw it. I was like, wouldn't that be neat as our generation gets up into that point if we're actually delaying stuff because of all the video games they told us to stop playing?
Exactly, right.
Right? Yeah.
And it's neat because I've definitely seen positive because I have heard of certain games that are built for people who have degenerative disorders and things of that nature. It just
Mm-hmm.
isn't something that I looked into for this specifically, because I've
Okay.
seen it on the opposite side too, like to help people who have autism and stuff like that. Allow them to connect a little bit better with the world around them, things of that nature,
Mm-hmm.
to increase their attention, things of that nature. But yeah, the specialized video games I feel like is really going to be a big thing going forward as more research comes out
Yeah.
specifically because it's especially if you can make it enjoyable and fun in some way. There's no guarantee that the first renditions are necessarily going to be like that, but
Yeah.
it's kind of a wonderful thing because I know that keeping an active mind is very important for staving that stuff off as well, along with the other
Mm-hmm.
treatments and stuff that do exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the education side of it is really interesting and how people have not realized that they've been tricked into learning because of these developers. Like even when you think about the simulators, right? Like you mentioned the pressure washer simulator. My son plays that. I'm like, what are you doing? But then I go in and I play Farm Simulator 2022 and I play for
Oh
hours. And I know
yeah.
about the tractors and everything. I'm like, I learned about farming. I didn't want to learn about farming, but now I know about it. Or like Flight Simulator, and people are learning to actually fly, or Trucking Simulator. And it's really interesting to me how people are developing these skills inadvertently and then coming across, or then you get people coming in with video games and they're purposefully using different inputs to develop these skills. Like you look at Rocksmith, right? Ubisoft still has it out, and you have essentially a USB patch cord you plug into your computer, and you
Mhm.
play your actual electric guitar on the
Oh
computer,
wow.
and it listens through this patch cord, and it gives you immediate feedback, so you're getting that dopamine or whatever. Like, I know exactly how I screwed up this time and I can fix that right away instead of having to listen and critique yourself. And it gamifies it, right? You get scores and you get rewards and everything like that. You could challenge your friends and all these sorts of things that they've built right into it. And literally you're just developing your own skills that you would be doing by watching YouTube videos or paying for a course, but now you just do it in front of your computer. And I just think that's really neat how they do that.
Yeah, especially old games like that that can continue to
Right?
be relevant, that because
Yeah,
they did what they did well enough, they just have stuck around. They stood the test of time, right?
exactly. Yeah. Like another one. Have you ever played Age of Empires?
Yes.
Yes. So did you play the most recent one, Age of Empires 4?
I did play it a little bit, and I was pretty impressed at the historical aspect of it. The fact that
Exactly.
you're kind of recreating real battles that had happened at the time,
Yeah.
which was really different than I remember the other ones
All
being.
the
It was a
previous ones never
different
had that,
take.
right? It was all sort of fictional. And I thought it was really neat too. Oh, here's an animation about what happened and a little bit of backstory. Now you're going to fight the battle, and then we're going to tell you about the outcome.
Yeah, yeah, it's just pretty sweet. So you're getting this layer of history that is on top of everything else, and it makes you
Mm-hmm.
feel like you're actually working through these historical battles. You are making the history happen, right?
Yeah, you're part of it. You get to live it, and it's a whole different thing. And it's neat. I'm really excited about the stuff that's coming out with VR. So you said you have you worked with VR stuff before, created stuff, or are you just?
No, I'm
Oh,
not.
okay.
I'm not a very good developer. I have a background in computer programming.
Oh, okay.
So my whole thing is to. It's sort of like a pet project of sorts to basically just keep on building up all of the different steps that I need. I think I'm going to have
Right.
to take a course probably in VR specifically because
Mm-hmm.
I have done a bit of game development, but it was long enough now that I'm basically starting from scratch. So I got a lot
Okay.
of things to go on to, but even if I don't make a career or make money doing it specifically, I would love to release something out to the public where
Fun thing to
it helps
try. Yeah.
people learn and actually get engaged with stuff that can actually help save people's lives.
Well, yeah, exactly right. Yeah, gamify it. They figure it out. It's a lot like that commercial, and it was really sort of silly that Guy Ritchie did in the UK for CPR, right after Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels came out.
Yeah.
And they were teaching people how to do just CPR, right? It's all about compressions and stuff like that. And it was just so ridiculous and so dumb and so like on the nose with the movie that it
Sticks on
stuck.
your head, man.
And people are like, I don't know how I saved him. I just remembered this commercial and then I did that, right? And it just sticks. Yeah, so it's neat to be able to do that into a video game aspect as well. Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
I'm
most
personally
definitely.
really excited for what the future has to hold for video games and the integration into society. Like I read Ready Player One when it came out, and I was like, oh my gosh, we're gonna be there. It's gonna be awesome, right? Look at all this. Kids are gonna go to school in VR worlds, and yeah, and we're close. We're just not quite there yet.
Exactly. It's gonna take a bit of a adjustment period for things to get really ingrained, but I feel
Yeah,
like the seeds are already there.
they are.
We're at
Yeah.
the beginnings, and as stuff becomes more effective, more research will be done, and it's just gonna kind of
Hmm.
grow on itself, right?
Yeah,
The schools of the future might look nothing like what we experience these days.
exactly. Yeah, the next 5 to 15 years, I think, will be a huge turning point. Like as a youth of today who grew up being able to develop these things, like they're building Roblox games, right? Okay, Roblox, whatever, but it's fun and they're getting used to it. And they're getting used to the coding, and they're going to take that and put it in Unreal Engine and start to build all these things and develop all these tools and resources. And they've got all these free communities around it that they're just sharing information. It's just going to explode, I think, once they get out into the world.
No, 100%,
Mhm.
man. It's a good time to be a gamer.
Oh yeah, always a good time to be a gamer.
Yeah.
It's not frowned on as much now though, which is nice.
Oh yes, definitely. Well, and there's so much cool stuff coming out. It's hard to keep on top of it, but it's what kind of makes it exciting. I got the
Yeah.
the Xbox Game Pass for PC, and it's just stupid the stuff that's coming out like
Oh
every
yeah.
week.
Yeah.
Like
It's
so
like,
many games I never would have tried, and I'm just like, oh man, this is actually like wicked.
yeah. Hey guys, you want a AAA title for free? Sure. Yeah. I'll try out Starfield. Why not? I was gonna play it anyway.
Well, it's here, so
Yeah. Yeah.
let's go
I
for
might
it.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also neat, I think, when you look at just the interfaces alone that they have available, like mouse and keyboard or controller. That was all that we had for the longest time. And now they have adaptive sort of controls for people with disabilities or
Yeah.
impairments to function, right? Where they can still integrate and play with the game in the same way as others, right?
I think we might get cut off here because
Oh,
the
okay.
I'm almost out of my Zoom regular or whatever. I'm not 100% sure what happens when I run out of
I
time.
have no
So
idea.
yeah,
Okay, you
it
can wrap
wants
it
me
up
to
if you want.
upgrade now. But yeah, man, it was. I'm glad you enjoyed the presentation, anyways. And
Yeah.
have you done your presentation for the class already?
No, not yet. I just started up last week.
Okay, so it's
Yeah,
the
I'm
first
right
thing.
at
It's
the
good to
beginning.
get this over and
Yeah.
done with to kind of see what's going on. I'm glad you enjoyed it, anyways, man. I
Yeah,
hope
it's
you have
good
a nice
stuff.
one.
Well done. Yeah, it's nice to meet you, Matthew. Have a good one.
So yeah, take care, dude.
Thanks. See ya.